Good morning and welcome to Morning Movie News. Yesterday, Legendary made a very interesting casting decision when it comes to their Warcraft film, and that's with the announcement that Ben Foster has been cast in the lead role. Yes, not just in the film in a supporting role as he usually has been done in the past, but they are putting him front and center. Now, this is totally a Duncan Jones type decision. He's directing the film, and when you think of Duncan Jones' resume, Sam Rockwell in Moon and Jake Gyllenhaal in Source Code, and both actors did a very good job, and Duncan Jones, I think, respectfully, and to his material that he was directing, chose the actor who would do the best job. And both actors really delivered. But then when you go and look at the box office, you can see that neither Rockwell nor Gyllenhaal are really big box office draws, and both films suffered because of that. That's why Duncan Jones, I feel, to some degree, has missed out on some of the big gigs that he's been up for, and I'm glad that Legendary is finally taking a chance with him for Warcraft. But, he was considered for Man of Steel, a number of movies, and he just would never really get the final a shot, I think, because he didn't have that big box office performer on his resume. So he's at it again. He hasn't learned his lesson. He's putting Ben Foster as the star of his film. And that's the thing here. You have Ben Foster starring, and the only other big name here is Paula Patton. And she has her fans as well. I'm a big fan of Ben Foster. I fell in love with him in 3:10 to Yuma when he was in that, and then I got the chance to see him on Broadway in the short-lived Orphans opposite Alec Baldwin. And he was really good. I think he's like a lightning bolt in his terms of his, what he brings to the screen or the stage. I think he's got a lot going on. I like the chances he takes, but he's a very, cultish actor. I don't know how mainstream he is. But, for somebody who has to interact with, dwarves and elves and, ogres and all these fantasy characters, he might be kind of like the crazy, jolt of realism that the franchise needs. So I do trust Duncan Jones in his choice, but it's a risky move. I mean, I'm willing to bet my movie ticket money on it, but would I bet the budget of Warcraft? I don't know. I mean, maybe they can't get anybody else to be in Warcraft because I don't know how prominent this fan base is. Video gamers are always saying, you don't understand. There are so many of us. We're like an iceberg. There's the tip, but we are mighty underneath the ocean. And I'm just saying, that giant, huge chunk better all go buy a movie ticket, or, video gamers are going to have a problem. But, video games are going to have their chance to prove themselves, coming in the next year or so, because we're getting a huge number of these kind of video game films, because Hollywood's like, oh, we're kind of running out of comic book characters to video games. And also I think video game companies see how much money is being made by comic book companies, and they're also becoming more aggressive to get into the market and also stay more involved with the films themselves to make sure there's that quality there, because they're already kind of doing movies in these video games already. So I do feel Warcraft will be very interesting. It will be a big year for Ben Foster coming up. He has the Lance Armstrong biopic coming up, which is great, and then now this Warcraft film. And I think with his casting, March, second week of March is a better release date for that kind of a film, because it is kind of turning into like a 300, that kind of movie. But, that also means, with that release date and that casting, this is a movie I wouldn't spend more than $100 million on in terms of the budget. And I'm sure they are because of all the special effects. But this seems to me like a $70 million film. We'll see. But I wonder what you guys think. Do you have faith in Ben Foster? Can he be a movie star? Is Hollywood just underestimated him this whole time? Or do you think that Duncan Jones is, not, he's got to learn his lesson. He needs a movie star, or someone who can, potentially be a movie star, and just had, because Ben Foster, I guess he's never had a big lead role yet. So let's see it, Ben Foster. It's your chance to step up to the plate. So that's the first story of the day. The second story of the day is that the internet just exploded, obviously, with the casting of Gal Gadot. I'm making sure I try and pronounce it right. And a lot of you yesterday were like, that's the French pronunciation of her name, not the Israeli. So I heard it was Gal Gadot. She's playing Wonder Woman. But as the eagle eye over Bleeding Cool spotted, there was some Lex Luthor news that also came out at the same time. Now, the big thing was that who they're considering. And the rumor is they're considering an actor named Callan Mulvey. And I had to look here to see his name because nobody knows who the hell the guy is. He was in Zero Dark 30, and he was also apparently in the upcoming 300 Rise of an Empire. And that makes sense because Zack Snyder's producing that movie, so maybe he's looking at the rushes and he goes, Callan's so talented, that's my Lex Luthor. I'm going to cast him as Lex Luthor. And I'd be like, that's very nice of you, Zack, that you want to help out your fellow actors and spread the wealth and spread the love. But at the same time, that means this entire movie at this point is, riding on the shoulders of Ben Affleck. Another casting decision like Ben Foster, which is very iffy. So I think they would have needed another star to play Lex Luthor. To bring in, a little bit more credibility to the movie. Just like Kevin Costner, I think, helped with the Man of Steel film, and, Michael Shannon even. He's a bigger star than this guy. So, when you have Ben Affleck opposite Henry Cavill, Gal Gadot, and now this Callan Mulvey guy, it's like, come on, you need to pepper some movie stars in here. But the thing that I found really interesting about this story was the description of Lex Luthor. Now, Zack Snyder and David Goyer apparently have reimagined the character, that he is like Brad Pitt playing a young Richard Branson. Now, first of all, that says to me, he's going to have hair, which I'm really against. But, I guess they tested the waters by making Lois a redhead. So they're like, well, if we got away with that, let's give Lex Luthor some hair. But I think making Lex Luthor kind of like, like a playboy kind of, businessman is a mistake. I mean, the whole point is that he's jealous of Superman to some degree. And, he's not a particularly popular person. That's one of the things that makes him so ruthless. But maybe it's his personality. I don't know. I'm very iffy on this whole thing. Lex Luthor is a character I think that I myself have been very excited about because they set up the perfect example for him to step in and be like, look at all these people that Superman has killed and he destroyed Metropolis. He is a menace. And for the first time, I think many of us were like, Lex, you might be onto something there. But if he's like wearing sunglasses and has sandy blonde scruffy hair, I think people are going to be like, what is this? So I don't know. Let's see who the casting is. If it's this Callan Mulvey guy doing this, I can tell you right now, I think I'm going to be nonplussed. If they actually got Brad Pitt to do it, maybe I'd be more interested. So I'd be more interested that he's got Richard Branson to play the role, for heaven's sakes. All right, so that's the second story of the day. The third story is that the Oscar race took another crazy turn yesterday when a whole different crop of people were named, Best Picture, and et cetera, by the National Board of Review. The National Board of Review, also a very respected organization. So instead of kind of like backing up what the New York Film Critics Circle did the other day, they kind of just pulled everything in a different direction, so it's a tug of war. So what were the wins? The big wins were Her. Her was a big winner. It won Best Picture and Best Director. And sometimes you'll see this with these smaller awards shows. They fall in love with a specific film. Studios know that, and they will sometimes target a specific group or organization to get this kind of a win. So that was also a big win for Her because Her has had mixed reviews and I think really wasn't part of the Oscar discussion, but with the National Board of Review giving it Best Picture and Best Director, that really, I think, raises its profile. Best Actor was Bruce Dern for Nebraska. He also won at Cannes. So you really are seeing a Robert Redford, Bruce Dern race start to heat up. That might be who the two big contenders are, which would be fascinating, as some people began to predict a few months ago. Actress was Emma Thompson from Saving Mr. Banks, so that's very exciting. I think considering that's never, they're always searching for nominees. They're like, oh, we got nothing. I think Emma Thompson is definitely a major contender for her role in Saving Mr. Banks. Supporting actor went to Will Forte for Nebraska. That's amazing. So that's another win for Nebraska, though. That really helps it. And then Octavia Spencer won Best Supporting Actress for Fruitvale Station. And that's also interesting because just like Jennifer Lawrence had already won the Best Supporting Actress Oscar, but it still is getting a lot of attention for her work in American Hustle, it looks like we might have another potential repeat here with Octavia Spencer. Although I have to say, I've seen Fruitvale Station. It's a very good movie, but Octavia Spencer's role, medium. I don't see her continuing to get a lot of attention. But the biggest headline out of here is that they did corroborate with the New York Film Circle on one movie, and that was The Wind Rises for Best Animated Feature. So I think this is slowly becoming a juggernaut contender, and I think it's very likely we'll see The Wind Rises win the Oscar for Best Animated Feature later in early 2014, which is I believe right around when the movie comes out. So very clever release date schedule there. Very, very smart. All right, so those are the three stories of the day. The viewer question is from Dominic Samaru, and he says, "Hi Grace, I love your videos and I have a question." Thanks, Dominic. Why does the film industry focus so much on box office revenue and measure their success by those numbers when there are so many other ways that films are distributed? Is it because despite piracy, on-demand, and Netflix, the theaters are still the major revenue? Also, do you think films should contain brand placement in order to make money, even when downloaded illegally? Thanks, and please answer. I am answering. Thank you for your question, Dominic. And this is actually a question that many people bring up, especially on Movie Math, because I think a lot of you get angry when your film that you love and holds dear to your heart is considered not successful because it doesn't do well at the box office. Now, there are cases, however, when a film can rebound. It cannot do well at the box office, but do so strongly on video and on demand, and just in general in its post-theatrical release life, that because it is brought back and Hollywood has high regard for it. One of the most prominent examples of that is Austin Powers. The original Austin Powers movie did not do particularly well, but it became such a phenomenon and made so much money in rentals when it was released that they had a sequel. The sequel was huge, and it had a third film, and it really became a major brand. So that happens occasionally. Now, of course, studios can make a lot of money on streaming and everything like that, but the real moneymaker for them used to be DVD, because they could charge a lot more for a DVD than they can to have you stream a movie or just download it permanently. But the fact that nobody buys DVDs anymore has really hurt the Hollywood industry. It's one of the reasons you don't see them making so many smaller films, because that source of revenue is gone for them. And so they want to make the blockbusters because that makes the most money. Now, the reason that the theaters and the box office are so important is because that's the horse. That's pulling the entire movie along. That's going to shape the public opinion of a film. Because, for instance, let's say you're scrolling through and you're like, what am I going to watch on demand? What am I going to get on Netflix? And you're much more likely to be like, wow, I remember seeing headlines that movie made a ton of money. How bad can it be? I'm going to watch it. And you're less likely to be like, hey, I remember that movie. No one saw it. It was in the theaters for like 2 weeks, and everyone was talking about what a flop it was. I'm not going to rent that because it's probably not very good. I'm sure there are some of you out there who are more adventurous, but we're talking about basic principles of watching and patterns. And Hollywood has to go by the majority instead of the minority, because when you're in a money-making business, when you have a low price point, you have to please the majority. So that's why Hollywood is so concerned with box office numbers, and also because that is still, I believe, where they make their most of their money, because the DVDs are gone. So, I mean, they do pretty well in streaming. And as for product placement, I feel that I don't really think that works. I think that sometimes you have it in films, but I think, for instance, I was watching Red 2 the other day on demand. It is okay. And they had like a really obvious Pringles placement, and it just took me out of the movie for a second. I was just like, wow, I wonder how much Pringles paid for that. Like, what are the odds that Pringles would have been in this shootout? That's what it was in a shootout. It was very funny. But so I feel that product placement is just too jarring, particularly because audiences are more savvy these days, like back in the 70s and 80s and stuff. And I think 80s and 90s when product placement was crazy. People in Man of Steel, that was a big thing when people were like, wow, you really wanted the IHOP there, and Sears is right behind him. It was very obvious product placement. So I think product placement just doesn't work that well. I think where it did work, though, in World War Z, when Brad Pitt drinks, there's the Pepsi. You'll notice he doesn't personally drink a Pepsi, though. I think he felt he didn't want to do that, but I thought that was pretty good product placement. Because as long as it's written into the script organically that a character has to drink some kind of product or eat some product or go somewhere, why not? But for instance, Walter Mitty, there's huge Papa John's and Cinnabon product placement, which is very jarring. You're like, the characters are like, let's go for a Cinnabon, and you're like, no, I never see that in movies. That's so weird. And it just comes out of nowhere. So I think they shouldn't do product placement. I have to say, I feel that, when you download and torrent and, illegally pirate a film, the industry is correct in their ads when they say, you're hurting people's jobs. I think people tend to think, oh, wow, well, you know what? The big studio's getting enough money. What do they care? Okay, but it does hurt the industry overall, and those box office numbers create the headlines, they create the image, the perception of the film, and that's why they're just so important. And they continue to be, especially with, as I said, with the loss of DVDs, the major source of revenue, unless they can spin it off to theme parks and merchandising still. So that's morning movie news today. Thank you so much for tuning in. Write down below what you think of the 3 stories and the viewer question, and anything you might like to see covered tomorrow, and any questions you might have. Thanks for watching. Bye.